Hello, everybody. My name is Gene Baur. I'm the president and co-founder of Farm Sanctuary. We're here at the People Barn in the Visitor Center at our Farm Sanctuary in Watkins Glen, New York. This is one of the few places in the world where vegan is normal. I am here with Jo-Anne McArthur, who interned here at Farm Sanctuary 20 years ago this month. We're going to be talking about the work she's been doing ever since, but we also have an audience here of our amazing staff from Farm Sanctuary. And it's been a wonderful couple of days walking around the farm, seeing the animals, meeting with experts about pasture management type of stuff, and Jo, reconnecting. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about when you first came to Farm Sanctuary, your internship and that whole experience.
I would love to. It's great to be back. So I was a vegetarian. I was interested in animal rights. I wanted to do an internship here, which is a 1-month shelter internship. And you had to be vegan on the premises out of respect for the animals. And I thought this was really extreme, but I was going to do it and then go back to being a vegetarian.
Really extreme, right? So this was your impression.
Yes,
Vegan is extreme. Yeah.
That was my impression. And so I came April 1st, and that was my first day of being vegan. And it's been 20 years vegan, lo and behold. So after 24 hours of being vegan, I didn't feel deprived like I thought I would feel. I actually
fast, right? Just being here, being in the vegan space.
That's right.
Wow.
And so after 24 hours of being here, I felt completely aligned with myself, intellectually, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. And I felt wonderful in this headspace, but I also thought, oh no, I'm going to be ostracized. How am I going to fit in with my family? But these things all worked themselves out in a much more easily than I expected. And, I know that a lot of people think that it's a burden to be vegan, but then when you do it and you live aligned and you know that you're not harming anybody, it actually is a very joyful way of living.
Yeah, and it's so cool to hear how quickly you sort of acclimated to it, and it just kind of naturally fit with you, right? And then I think also part of becoming vegan or transitioning often means we got stuff in the closet. We got belts, we got boots. And I recall that you had an experience along those lines too.
That's right. So as I said, you had to, be vegan, wear vegan here on the premises. And I was, except for this one pair of boots that I brought with me that had some leather on them. And I was thinking, I shouldn't have to go out and buy a pair of vegan boots just to intern here. So I didn't. And I was wearing my one article that had leather on it, these boots. And I was having this blissful moment brushing Arbuckle out in the field. And I saw Arbuckle's 2 front legs and his lovely hoofs right next to my 2 legs and my 2 feet. And it was a really nice picture. I'm a photographer, and I snapped a picture of our, 4 feet in a row, but I was wearing leather. And it hit me so hard. I was like, oh, I never again want to wear someone like Arbuckle. And that was the end of that.
Yeah, because Arbuckle was a steer, right? Mm-hmm. And here is this animal with his skin, and here are your shoes or boots. And for many vegans, this is, what do we do with our stuff, right? And there's an argument to be made to don't throw it away, use it, but also you don't want to model it, right? So there's no easy answer still to this whole thing, but for you, that being such an epiphany, right? Mm-hmm. Were there other epiphanies or things that you experienced during your internship? Did you do stockyard visits, for example? Were there things that you recall in addition to this experience with Arbuckle and sort of the vegan thing?
Yeah, it was a great learning experience overall. But one of the main takeaways is that if you can visit a sanctuary, do. It's a life-changing place. I thought, well, I'll just continue to maybe wear leather or, these kinds of things until you meet the individuals. And like I said, I didn't want to be wearing Arbuckle. All of these animals are individuals. We never think of farmed animals as individuals. We maybe think of them, off in farms. They number in the billions, but they really are individuals, just like Ari, the cow who gave me a cuddle yesterday when I had to cry because I was on the property again for the first time. And in 4 years. It was really
You're
emotional.
remembering Orlando, I recall, right? Yesterday.
Yeah, Orlando was one of my favorite guys, and I guess I just missed him by a few months. It's lovely being back, but you asked about other takeaways that I had here with the internship.
Did you do any Stockyard? I remember back in the
Yeah.
day, we used to go with the interns to Stockyards to kind of do this investigative stuff. And do you recall doing that while you were here as an intern?
We did. I went with Michelle Waffner, and we just went and sat, and sat and watched the experience of the animals. And it's good to get your nose in there and lay your eyes on these events. And if you can't, then to look at the pictures and look at the videos that the farm creates, that We Animals Media creates, to get an experience of what it's like for them. And farmed animals go through so much. They go through transport, they get separated from their families, they get tails docked and teeth cut and ears tagged. There's just so much going on. And then these auctions, these sale yards are completely horrific for them. These animals are terrified, and they're being hit so that they move back and forth so people can see them and bid on them. It was a really eye-opening experience to do it.
To witness that, right? And I recall that our experience with the Stockyard, and probably the reason you just sort of sat and witnessed, is they were very unhappy to see cameras. I don't know if you recall that, but they were very against cameras.
I didn't bring camera.
Yeah, we were forbidden from it. Otherwise, they would probably kick us out, So, but lately, you've been traveling all over the world.
Lately, the last 2 decades, yeah.
Yeah, I guess last 2 decades, yeah, with the camera. And what has that been like? What have been some of your, I guess, most memorable experiences? As you say, people need to see this. People need to be aware. And that's what I really love about the work you do, what We Animals does, is to make visible the reality of these other animals' experiences. And so, and oftentimes you're in situations where people who are engaged in this sort of abusive practice do not want you there. And that's a lot.
You just covered a lot of ground there, Gene.
But you have so last 20 years you've been doing this, and
it was the farm in part that galvanized me to do it. I got a great education here on how animals are treated, what they go through, what the possibilities are, how we can all be activists in different way. Whatever our skills are, we can use them out in the world to make the world a better place. And my skill is taking pictures. And so, over 60 countries later, 2 decades later, my main focus has been documenting the plight of farmed animals, because these stories are very, very hidden, as we know. And in fact, my agency and I made a photo book called Hidden Animals in the Anthropocene. There's 40 photographers, and it's this big book of conflict photography. I've always been moved and influenced by war photography, and there is a war on animals happening, but it's an invisible one. And so that's what We Animals does, is, make these stories visible, as does the farm. You guys do it in a different way by saving them and doing humane education and inviting people here. Yeah.
So conflict photography,
Yeah.
Is this an actual genre? Is it a type? And
Yeah.
you consider your work to be conflict photography?
Influenced by conflict photography. So what we did at We Animals is create a new genre, and I thought, like, who are we to create a new genre of photography? I might end up being the laughingstock, but it's being embraced. People are calling themselves animal photojournalists. There are essays and articles and books, being written on it, chapters of books rather. And
books pretty soon, maybe.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to create a new genre because there is no genre that is inclusive of all animals. So we have wildlife and conservation photography, and they are exclusive to certain types of animals. Competitions even specifically exclude captive and farmed animals. And then we have photojournalism, which is about the human condition. We have street photography, which is a bit of everything, but doesn't have this real focus. So we believe that this focus is needed, and sure enough, we're making we've made a photo agency of it. We have over 100 contributors now, and there's just like a groundswell of support. So it's really good.
And it seems that part of what you do is, in addition to photographing and witnessing and showing people the animals, non-human animals experience, you also have some interesting work, I think, that connects non-human animals in a human context, sometimes even with human interactions.
That's very important, in fact.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about that? Some of those pieces and the ones that for you really are important for people to be aware of.
Yeah, well, with this work, animals are in these predicaments because of us. And so the work that we do, for the most part, is not portraits of animals. We can see that all over the place, and it doesn't give context. And so the context with animal photojournalism is that we have done this. We have created these systems. The systems need to be seen, and we need to see who is in these systems. And so we show the locks and the bars and the chains and the brutality, the actions, animals hanging upside down, being slaughtered, the milking systems, the size of industry. So we need to see the size and scale. We need to see the brutality of this unnatural world we put them in, and how we kill them and how we transport them. And then we really need to see the individual in the midst of all of it. So some of our most successful images are those that have eye contact with the animal and show the system around them. And it's like that for conflict photography. When you see images of war, if you see a crowd of 1,000 people, we can't really relate to that so much. But if you have one person in that crowd looking at the camera, it changes everything. So that's what we're doing with APJ, animal photojournalism.
It's sort of like the empathy that it hopefully grabs people to have some of.
Empathy central to our work here, at We Animals and the Farm. Yeah.
And the polar bear picture, right, in the zoo, that's one that I really love. And I want to talk a little bit about that one.
Well, in fact, you have mentioned this a few times now, so you're really attracted to this image. So you could tell me why that's an interesting picture for you. And there was a book written about it, based on it, by Martin Rowe at Lantern, formerly at Lantern. But what does that picture mean to you?
I think what is to me so impactful about it is that you have this polar bear who is obviously somebody looking through this glass at people who are gawking at this confined individual, and just the agency and lack of agency, the power and the strength and the lack of power and strength, and the, I guess, longing and the enslavement really of this individual is very touching. So that's, I think, why I keep thinking about that one, the polar bear in the zoo. But there are so many other non-human animals that are in similarly horrendous circumstances. And as you travel around the world and observe these things and witness these things and document, are there ways that you find solace, right, and sanctuary? I know that many times you'd come here for sanctuary and healing. Are there other places like around the planet that you also
other sanctuaries?
Other sanctuaries, yes.
A little bit more about Kunuk, who is that polar bear, is that he died from a virus that he contracted from being bitten by a mosquito. And he would never have been exposed to mosquitoes up in his, his natural habitat where he was taken from. So like what an ending to his life of captivity down in Toronto where he lived.
Which also speaks to the displacement, right? Instead of like certain individuals who live in certain ecosystems and are part of those ecosystems and play their role or have agency, have expression in them, selfhood, then we take them out of areas and put them in a zoo.
And this is where the stories and the dialogue need to happen, because it's really hard to show that in photos. For example, I have an image of a giraffe standing in a parking lot in Germany. He's part of a circus and a zoo, but he really shouldn't be in a parking lot in Germany. He should be in Africa. But what else is there about that story that I can't tell? I can't tell how he was wild caught or taken away from his family. I can't show that he, might be killed soon because he's considered surplus. We can't tell, if he was part of a breeding program and so on. So this is where storytelling is really important.
It's a moment in time, right? The giraffe in the parking lot. Before that time, there were other moments in time, and after that. And I think you also capture moments in time throughout the process as well, right? And also people interacting with animals.
And that is being a photojournalist, really. You want to, it puts the journalism in photojournalism. You capture a moment in time, but who are these people? Who are these animals? What's going on? Where were they from? And fill it in and imbue it with like the poignancy that it really needs to reach people.
For the budding photojournalist, would you have any sort of like advice? Like, how do you get involved in this? What can somebody who is interested?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just start.
Get the camera and go.
Just start. You don't need a good camera.
Does a phone work? iPhone?
Yeah, but you also, it does. They take brilliant images now, but there's something nice to adjusting an f-stop and having a little more, decision making, quick decision making on a mirrorless or a DSLR. So just start, have a crappy camera even. It's about the composition and the content. It's not about the quality of the gear. If you get really good at it, then get yourself some better camera equipment. But just do it and just practice, practice, practice. Don't, sit behind your desk thinking about it. Just get out there and shoot lots of crappy pictures. I mean, I've been a photographer for 25 years and I take so many crappy pictures, and you always will. I always will, but you have to shoot a lot to get some of those magical shots.
So don't be afraid of making mistakes, I guess, right?
That's right. Yeah. And also, I always say it's very simple, perhaps overly simple, but get down and get close. You want to get into the experience of those who are in front of you. And you can, if you create a connection with someone who's in front of you, then that creates a connection with anyone looking at your image for the rest of eternity. So get down, get close, move around. If you're not getting the picture you want or you envision, you have to move your feet. So you should always be moving as a photographer.
And where should budding photojournalists go? Should they go to sanctuary? Should they go to other places where non-human animals are? What are some good kind of early places for people to go check it out?
I love this question because people hear that I've been to over 60 countries and they think, well, like, I can't afford that, or where can I go? You don't really have to go farther than the town you're in, because inevitably there are people who are keeping birds in cages. So wouldn't that be interesting to do a story on people who keep birds or frogs or turtles? Interview them, ask them why they keep animals. You're going to get a lot of information out of that. Go to local farms, go to local sanctuaries, go to the local pig fest, or like a rib fest, and photograph the grossness of these barbecues and really get into it. You can get into anything, within 50 miles of you.
Do you ever do video of I can imagine a rib fest and the interactions there. And I imagine as a photojournalist, a big part of it is just sort of being quiet, observing, and recording.
That's right.
And do you ever interact and engage and maybe ask provocative questions? And do you just mainly a fly on the wall type of approach?
Mainly a fly on the wall, though I am curious, and I do ask questions. And in fact, if I could just slow down a little more, maybe I would do more of that. It's one of my downfalls is maybe shooting too quickly and then going on to the next thing and not making time to make a more robust project out of it. And I encourage robust projects. Spend a few months or a few years on one project and ask a lot of questions, do some writing, and make it really thorough.
Yeah, no slowing down and paying attention. Although as a photographer, I imagine you have to do that a little bit, right?
And this is a nice place to do it.
Yeah, and then here you're immersing yourself in beautiful images, right? Instead of cruelty images.
Yeah, and it's such a place of healing. Someone on the farm today who apparently comes every 6 weeks to visit Bella. Yeah, and they had tears rolling down their face today, and they, it's from the emotion of just being around these rescued animals. You're faced with them, and the tears come because they are, well, ambassadors. I don't know if we always want to say that, but they're the lucky few who are here. And I will never get used to looking at animals and how incredible they are, and curious and complicated and sentient, and they're just they deserve more than what we give them. And so I look at them here and I cannot believe that anyone would look at these individuals and just want to slice their throats or, chop them up, treat them horrifically. But that's the norm for billions of animals every year, every moment of every day. And that's the power of sanctuary. You get to meet the individuals and, see a different way of doing things.
And they're safe and they will not be harmed. And so not only are their bodies not abused, but their lives, their emotional experience, and I think the experience of the visitor and the human being that gets to see animals in safety is also not experiencing this violence. I don't know what the experience of all visitors are, but I would not be surprised if, and I don't know what your thoughts are and why a person would come here and connect and cry and feel so deeply. Is it individual or is it more broadly contextual, do you imagine? I have no idea. I know I saw you crying for Orlando the other day. I know that was very individual. But I imagine this visitor probably has a friend here that's very close. I don't know.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah. Well, I think it's both of those things. You come here and you connect with the individuals, but you also can scale back and think about all of the animals who are unlucky and who aren't here. Coming to sanctuaries makes me want to work harder as an activist. It reinvigorates me to to work hard for them. I'm going to get a little emotional right now because there's just so many animals who need so much help and it's so urgent. And, facing animals, whether they're in a factory farm or here, reminds me of the urgency.
And also maybe being here, it's kind of like what is possible, in contrast with what is real for so many billions. When you're in these very difficult circumstances, do you ever experience abusers kind of maybe becoming more empathetic? Do you ever sort of observe their experience or witness maybe some inklings of compassion?
Absolutely. And I just, I don't think of them as abusers. I think of them as people.
Good correction. Sorry, I shouldn't have said. Yeah.
That's okay.
People involved in abusive behavior, but they're not abusive. They're not abusers inherently.
Perfect. Yeah. A lot of them are workers who would prefer another job, a different job. They have said as much to me. But some of them have been in it. It's a small family business, so they've been in it for life, and that is curious. They've just been slitting throats for 40 years. And they're chill and they're friendly and they want to chat with you. So, but that's the anomaly. For the majority of people that I've spoken with, they are workers who are sometimes unpapered or underpaid, long hours, dangerous work. People who have asked me where I'm from and are there better jobs for refugees in my country and how easy is it to get to Canada, and these heartbreaking questions. They really don't want to be there.
I think that's so true. And you have individuals that are also stuck in these systems. Like the polar bear in the zoo, you have the worker in the slaughterhouse, you have environments and ecosystems where it's difficult to escape. And if you only know one thing, it's hard to imagine something else. And so, but people have actually spoken to you about wanting to live a different type of life and where they're not causing harm to animals. They actually are concerned about the animal abuse and they don't want that.
Yeah, that's right. I remember photographing a rescue here where I think 1,100 birds arrived, and there was a farmer on the West Coast who didn't want to kill his remaining 3,000 hens. So sanctuaries all over the U.S. got together. Some took 10, 100, 1,000, but 1,100 of them flew to the East Coast, and that was quite special. And also there's a woman in Switzerland, Sarah Haley-Tag, and she has transfarmed over 100 farms. And these are sometimes younger people who have inherited farms from their families, and they're just not feeling easy about the system and keeping animals in this way. So imagine transfarming over 100 places. That's great. And they're doing other kinds of plant-based farming and hilariously growing chickpeas for hummus, such a cliche.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not anti-farmer. We're anti-cruelty. We're anti-violence. We're anti-unnecessary killing. You know, and we actually had a bill introduced here in New York State, the Farmer Opportunity Bill, to transfer millions of dollars that's been used to consolidate industrial dairies to support community-oriented plant-based farms, and it would be targeted to many of those types of generational farmers where the younger generation comes in and says, this dairy thing doesn't make sense, what can I do instead? But there are just not the systems of support. So that's where, again, these individuals, so chickpeas, actually they grow a lot around here, as a matter of fact. So that's a potential opportunity for dairy farmers if anybody's watching.
Yeah.
But I think, so yes, we're completely on the same page. How do we create different systems and
normalize them? And that's part of what we animals can do. We can tell these stories of people who have made a change. And, you know, like me going from vegetarian to vegan, I realized like this is actually pretty great. There's nothing to be afraid of. Well, we're all generally built to be a little bit hesitant about change. We feel like it might be an affront to our traditions, our culture, what we know. It's comfortable, and that's why we eat animals. That's why we sort of blindly take part in all this abuse. But there are other ways, and people need encouragement and they need empowerment. And that's something else that you guys do here at the farm, and we try to do, you know, when we tell stories of change and progress and hope and compassion with we animals through our stories. We want to empower people and see like, oh yeah.
Seems like a big part of empowerment too is inspiration, right? And awareness, which is I think something you really do well with we animals. It's like awareness about the problems, urging people to question the relationships. And so when you look to the future, like what do you see we animals doing? What do you see with your work? I know we were talking about like the art space a little bit with some of your photos. What kind of future do you envision?
That's such a big question. And we animals now has 100 contributors and 14 or 15 staff, and honestly that's a lot of growth in 4 or 5 years. So I want us to just continue to level out and be strategic and think very strategically about how we can best reach people, how we can help NGOs, and how we can get our work out into the media. So, you know, I don't have grand plans for major change.
We have an archive of like 20,000 photos or something like that.
Thanks for mentioning
it's
that.
great
yeah.
that that's accessible and people can see it and it's available for people, right?
It's available for free to anyone helping animals. So NGOs and people all over the world use this work. It's 20,000 videos and photos. And we are able to give everything away for free because we're a not-for-profit, so donations and grants and things like that. I mean, just to be really honest, there's no but. I have the best job in the world, but also I'm at heart a freelance photographer. So sometimes I'm like, this is a lot. and maybe you have felt that way. I mean, you didn't know you were building this massive machine that is Farm Sanctuary. I love how we're building and growing, and sometimes I feel daunted, but I mean, ultimately and overall, I feel really inspired and really proud of. And it's a great space to be in, like the animal advocacy space right now. Whether you're a lawyer or an artist or a journalist or a scientist or sanctuary or a photojournalist, like this is a great place to be because the door is opening on these issues. If you're a chef, like anything, you can bring that to helping animals. And
could not agree more. And I think when you especially look at animals used in agriculture and that whole space, it's so relevant. Health, social justice, ecosystems.
Yes.
So many potentials. And right now we also have this burgeoning plant-based food business. So culinary and legal. I mean, there's so many different potentials.
That's right.
So it's a great time,
I think, to be
doing this work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And we also have some specific questions for you that some folks sent in. So I'm going to start going over those right now. First question. How can we try to get more people to join the movement?
Well, we've just touched on this, but essentially whatever people are good at, encourage them to use those skills to make the world a better place for animals and for everyone. I'm a photographer, so I take pictures to help others. But if you're interested in law or journalism or the culinary arts and so on, So that's the short answer. What about you?
I would say, yeah, follow your bliss, right? The old Joseph Campbell statement, like, know thyself, do you as well as you can within this broader context of kindness, empathy, connection. So I think we are all individuals. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. Play to the strengths, understand the weaknesses, and look for help.
Very good.
Because we all need a lot of help too.
Very good. I like that. Yeah.
So how do you manage the trauma of photographing animals before slaughter in factory farms, et cetera? Any advice for coping with the animal atrocities?
I've had years to figure this out. I know everyone wants a cut and dry answer right now because a lot of people in this space are dealing with this question. I'd like to recommend Patrice Jones's book called Aftershock. That's like, was a Bible to me in my early days of trying to cope. But there's one anecdote that I can share briefly. Story. I have learned, and I'm a very visual person, so I visualize that there are two tracks, and I'm in one of the tracks, and I'm living parallel to all of the pain and suffering in this track, but not in the track of the pain and suffering, which I used to do, which is why I was diagnosed with PTSD, which is why I needed therapy, because I was just living in that. And I felt like I had to, in a way. I owed it to the animals to feel what they were feeling. But that creates burnout, and a lot of people burn out in animal advocacy because it's such a uphill battle, and it's so painful when you care so much. And we all need to stick around for the animals and not burn out. So nurture our joy, choose to live happily. Now, what I had to do, coming back to being a visual person, is with these two tracks, I had to visually pluck myself out of the painful track and into the other one, where it's nice and peaceful and there's flowers growing all around me. And just live parallel to it, live close to the suffering, but not in it. And I choose to go in it when I need to, when I'm shooting and I want to connect with the animals and I want to be right there with them. And my heart is open and I'm trying to feel everything that they're feeling, even in the worst moments, even the most painful moments of their lives. But then at the end of the day, pluck over here. You need to stay over here, Jo, so that you can regain your energy and live a happy life.
Yeah, I think of like the serenity prayer, right? The strength to change the things I can, serenity to accept what I can't change, and wisdom to know the difference, and to dwell in the good, and not to be aware of, to educate about, but not to dwell in the pain, because that, like you say, it'll tear you up,
There's enough pain in this world, and it's good to be aware of it. But yeah, it's also really nice to have a joyful life in this short time that we have here on Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is one thing I can get non-vegan friends to do to make an incremental move forward?
Well, I have another story. And it's years ago when my mom stopped eating pigs. And incremental is the word here. It's the right word. She hadn't eaten pigs for a number of months, and then she wanted to tell me, and it was a really big thing for her to tell me. And she even sat me down and she wanted to see me on video to tell me. And back then, it was over 10 years ago, I was more of the kind of activist that, the way I reacted to her was like, well, that's good, but like, you could do more. Yeah. And
I know that one. Not good enough.
Yeah. And like, if I could, I would take that back a million times over if I could, because what she needed and deserved was my love and encouragement and my championing. And I learned from that. And now I champion absolutely everyone with the incremental changes that they're making. Because another thing is that a family member, my sister, I came home from an investigation one night. It was like 5 a.m, 6 a.m. She's getting up for work. I get to her place. I've come from a pig farm. I stink. I show her the photos on the back of my camera, and she is incensed. And she all morning, and when she gets home from work, she just can't stop talking about, she can't believe this is happening just an hour or two away from her house. And I was like, yeah, she's really getting it. She's really getting it. And then we went to a festival on the weekend, and she ordered a sausage. And I was like, Michelle, tell me about that. Like, what? I know how angry you were about those pictures. And she said, oh, well, I could never be a vegan. Right. So people think that we want them to just go vegan, or that they have to just go vegan. And that seems, as it seemed to me, really difficult 20 years ago. And so I don't tell people to go vegan. I champion every kind of change. I do want to point out that my sister eventually became a really hardcore vegan animal rights activist, but it wasn't that those photos that did it for her.
It's really a process, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, one of our most important values at Farm Sanctuary is to speak to people where they are on their own journeys, and critical to that is to empathize and understand that different people are on different journeys, right? And to be respectful of that. Even though we may be very upset about what's happening to other animals, people often, it's a process.
I always remembered that I was a meat eater for half my life.
Yes.
And it seemed impossible to stop being so.
Yeah, I think that incremental process, as opposed to all or nothing, if we're going to advocate all or nothing all the time, we're probably going to usually not get everything. We're just going to get probably nothing. But
I wish it weren't so. But
I wish it weren't so. I wish it weren't so. So the next question is, can we reach a world where animals are stopped from being slaughtered? Can we create a vegan world?
I don't think about that.
Why not? It's so far out there, I guess. It's not very practical in the near term.
Yeah, that's right. It's like I want that dream. My goal is total animal liberation. But if I was trying to figure out how to achieve that every day, I think I would lose it. I would be so depressed. Some people, it works for some people to have their eye on that goal. But for me, I put one foot in front of the other every day and just do my best. And sometimes that's a lot, and sometimes it's not that much. But that keeps me healthy to think that way.
No, and for me, I dream about it. So I kind of live there in my head all the time, recognizing that it's not likely, but dreaming and hoping always. So that to me, I sort of almost intentionally delude myself into the possibility, which is, you know, we each have different forms of coping and surviving, right? So. And
this is a great place to come and dream and to be and to witness a world of possibility, animals who have autonomy and choice. You know, going out onto the property with Forrest yesterday and today, it was so lovely to see them approaching the animals and saying, like, you know, let's see if they want some attention right now. Like, you know, even here we might feel that they're rescued, they're here, we can just go right up to them and give them a scratch or anything. But no, like, you watch, you observe, and you see how they react to you. And I just loved that the tour was being conducted in that way. And it just showed also how much space the animals here have for choice, and it's just beautiful.
You know, a huge part of this is just to try to walk the talk of living among and with others, for humans to have some humility, because that's not something that our species is very good at and has not been good at. But also just recognizing that these are individuals who've in many cases been through a lot. And, you know, since the beginning, we had the sign still, you're now entering the animal sanctuary. Please remember you're a guest in their home. And we're really trying to take that to heart and to also understand more about the traumas and to empathize more. And we're doing some amazing research now on PTSD in animals.
Well, there was an animal yesterday who we approached, and Forrest said, like, well, you know, they shake their head. That's something they do. So we're trying to figure out, is it PTSD or is it something else that they're trying to communicate? And it was really great to hear about that. And also you have a big chicken study.
Yes, the joy of learning. And so, you know, in addition to basic kind of physical, biological things, there are significant emotional experiences chickens and other non-human animals have, and to really try to understand more about who they are and what they're experiencing. And, you know, so often, you know, it's been said that you protect what, or in this case, who you love.
Yeah.
And a big part of this work, I think, will allow more people to understand and ultimately to love and appreciate animals who sadly are slaughtered by the billions. And it's really important work, I think. And I'm very proud of the team here at Farm Sanctuary that's doing it. And it's some really interesting things underway. We're building a cafe.
Yeah.
We're doing some more eco-friendly stuff on the farm. It's a really good time. But I think we're probably coming close to the end of our time here. Is there any, okay, I guess we got 5 more minutes, which means we maybe have a couple more questions.
Are there any coming in from?
Are there any coming in from, I think we just have them all here, actually. I don't think we have any.
Okay.
So what is the best advice you received from a photography teacher or filmmaker that helped to improve your animal photojournalism?
I haven't had a lot of mentors in animal
There's not been too many of it, I don't think, right?
No. I've had mentors in photojournalism and in conflict photography. And I remember one mentor, Larry Towell, telling me not to go to Afghanistan and to shoot what I know and shoot what I love. And I was offended by that. But it also made some sense to me. Like, it felt like he was, you know, maybe pushing me down a bit, but he wasn't. No, he wasn't at all. But he was right. The point is that he knew that going to Afghanistan was like not really me, but that I had this love for animals and this concern for animals, even more importantly, and that I wasn't yet really following those stories, in fact. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about, like, what do I love best in the world? What do I care most about in the world? And not only was it the story of animals, it was the story of farmed animals. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, somebody other than ourself can help us understand something about ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And our work, in photography, it's really painful to get a critique, but it really helps you improve in leaps and bounds. And so I encourage anyone who's in photography to show their work to other photographers or to professional photographers. And it's really fun. I keep saying it's painful, but it's also like a heck of a lot of fun to have things torn apart and then rebuilt. Yeah.
Well, it's like exercise, right? When you're working a muscle, you
tear it.
You tear it, and then it comes back stronger.
Yes,
usually,
great.
Hopefully. And what advice would you have for your younger self?
You go first.
Oh, man. I think breathe, sleep, drink water.
Oh, the basics. I love it.
The basics, man.
Yeah.
Start with the basics and recognize that this is a long-term process. Don't take it day by day, but also recognize that change is constant. And as difficult as a particular day may be, or a particular incident may be, it will change for better or worse. So if you're having a really great day, stay humble. Stay humble.
I was gonna say that too. Stay humble and open to learning. When there's a teaching in front of me that I'm resisting, I can really feel it in my body, and I can feel, hear all the arguments in my head. But like, there's a really nice friction there that one should stay humble to and stay open to. I've even done that in the last 36 hours here, honestly, and it's been so great. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's different ways of knowing too, right? So we have the intellectual stuff, right? But then there's also the kind of embodied knowing, right? So there's these different ways of experiencing and certain types of wisdoms, right? And I think that, so for you, do you think more in your head, more in your gut? Where does that come from, do you think, for you generally?
I don't know.
All of it, right?
I mean, I'm always following my gut, but I try and, follow with data backing up.
Trying to be reasonable
Yeah.
every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's that balance, right? I think in terms of bean counting and magic, they're both important. They're different, but they're both very important.
Yeah. And when we have good ideas, it's great to be full of great ideas, but then sit down and look about the practicality of them, and then put them in order of importance, and maybe put some things in the parking lot, and you'll get more done that way.
Yeah, right. No, it's very true. Have the dreams, but have the practicality, right? The idealism and the realism. Important, both. And the dreams. I think do you have a lot of dreams about the future, or do you have big dreams, or how do you think along those lines?
I guess I don't want to say I guess. I am fortunate to have a life in which like I just want to stay on this track. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing because we're prying open that door to more visibility on these stories. Yeah.
Beautiful. And that's like in the moment, right? Be here now, which is really important.
Hard to do, but
it is, but
yeah.
Ultimately it's all we have, right?
Very wise.
And whatever the dreams are in the future, they start now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I guess
Lots
we're
of wisdom
probably at
here.
our time now. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Check out farmsanctuary.org, check out the We Animals website, visit Farm Sanctuary, visit other sanctuaries, be kind to other animals, be kind to other people.
Amen.
Amen.
Let's sign off there. Yeah.
Yes, sounds good.
Thanks, Gene.
All right, thanks, Jo.